Hey guys, Bobby Thompson here, back with another video. And today we're going to be talking about a question I get asked, which is, if the earth were flat, why can't I see the sun 24/7? So without further ado, let's jump into it. And I like to start with a famous quote by René Descartes that says, if you would like to be a real seeker after truth, it is necessary that at least once in your life you doubt as far as possible all things. So if you've never questioned the shape of the earth, you're not a truth seeker. You have to doubt everything and prove it for yourself. So with that said, there are 6 factors that go into our ability to see the sun. And they are perspective, angular resolution, limitations of light, visibility, atmospheric magnification, and cloud deck. Perspective. So we see, our perspective is everything comes to a point. You can see this in pictures, in real life. There shouldn't be any question here. That should be easy enough to grasp. There are angular resolution limitations. So the human eye can see about 0.02 degrees or 1 arc minute. With the naked eye, if we're looking at the Eiffel Tower here, this is what it would look like. This is the limit. This is the limitations of our angular resolution, right? If we magnify that, here's 30x, 50x, 100x. Obviously, we can see further. So, there's detail here in the top of this tower that we can only see through magnification. It's there. It's just very tiny, but you can zoom in on it. Another example from 1x to 100x. And an example from 1x to 200x. So here we're going to see a real life example of increasing angular resolution. So let's kick off this video.
It's yet another simple observation that anyone can do at home. You have a coin and a flat table, and I'm going to demonstrate how we can make an object disappear bottom up without the need of curvature, or without the need of a physical obstruction for that matter. Now you Globers are going to sit at home and say that table is just higher than the observer height or the camera height. Now let's get that sorted quick smart. When we zoom in, we increase the focal length and increase the angular resolution. And we can resolve that coin in its entirety. As you can see, the bottom of the coin shining. It's yet another simple observation. It's yet another.
Okay, another example. All right, I don't want to get dinged on this music here. Hopefully I don't get a strike for that. But as you can see, by zooming in with the camera, you can bring this object into focus, which was obscured by the foreground. And this is by increasing angular resolution, so that we have our eyes have limitations. Okay. Now we're going to talk about limitations of light. So light decreases with distance. The spread increases and the intensity decreases. And that is, there's a law for that called the inverse square law. And you can pause this and read it if you want to. I'm not going to, for brevity's sake, we're just going to, it's here for posterity. But basically what it says is that if you take a distance from a light source, whatever that distance is, if you double it, it's gonna cover 4 times more area, 1 to 4, but the intensity is going to drop to a fourth from 100 to 25. So you can see there's a major drop off. For every time you double the distance, the intensity becomes 1/4. And again, just another example of this, of how this works. A different source. So multiple sources, feel free to look it up yourself. It's excuse the heading there. That's from a previous, I reused this template. But ignoring that, here we have light, and as it gets further away, it goes from a very bright light giving off a very high intensity to a dot of light, right? And if this were to go further, those lights would disappear. You wouldn't see them. Maybe they do go further. Maybe this is the end. I kind of doubt it. It looks like it's the end, but again, very bright lights giving off a very high intensity, and as you get further, it diminishes, right? Same thing. A little more obvious here. And here they probably did vanish. Now we have some, we have a thicker atmosphere going on, but it just really drives the point. Here you can see the intensity dying down. Our atmosphere has dust, particles, humidity. It does have, and over a great distance, that's a huge factor as well, which we'll talk about. So again, you can see this intensity getting much, much lower. And there would come a point where if this guy were 5 miles away, you couldn't see him holding his light. It doesn't matter if there's nothing in between you and him. And this is a fact you can witness yourself. There are plenty of experiments you can do. Another example of this, if you doubt it, and if you do believe in the heliocentric model, we can prove this through evidence NASA gives us. So if we, here's a little excerpt from the Hubble Ultra Deep Field. And the point I want to get at here is that we were able to zoom in and see 10,000 galaxies. Let's play this. Don't want to get dinged. I'll turn the volume down, but in short, here's the video of the Hubble Ultra Deep Field, and this is a tiny swath of space, supposedly, that they were able to zoom into and see 10,000 more galaxies. So what does that mean? It means there were sun. So if you would say, well, over a flat Earth, it can't be possible that you couldn't see a sun. Why not? You do it in space. What's the difference? This is an example of micro versus macro, right? They just tricked you on the scale. You believe that in space things can get far enough away. There's 10,000 galaxies. A galaxy. We're in the Milky Way. Do you know how big a galaxy is? It's got suns that are, I don't know how, they could have millions of suns in one galaxy. We're talking about 10,000 galaxies. Not only are you not seeing suns, you're not seeing galaxies. So yes, angular resolution is a problem the farther an object gets away. So yeah, if you have a belief that the sun is 400 Earths and the Earth is 25,000 miles in circumference or thereabouts, yeah, that's a problem, right? Like you'd have a hard time thinking, how could it get that far away? But you have to understand the model first. You have to look at the model and understand that the Earth or the sun would be an unknown distance above the cloud deck. Some people speculate 3,000 miles, but that's just a speculation. Although there's some math behind that, it could potentially be accurate or close. And the size of it, unknown. But if the Earth is 25,000 miles across, when you take an object that's might be, a millionth the size of what they tell you the sun is, and then take it 20,000 miles away, yes, absolutely, it would. it could go out of sight, as proven here. So NASA gives you all the proof you need right here to verify that an entire galaxy will disappear if you take it far enough away. So this drives my point home all in itself. There's no more proof needed. But let's go further. I threw this in because UI Scuddy, if you're familiar with it, it makes our sun look like a grain of sand, sand, right? And our sun can supposedly fit something like 4 million Earths in it. So and there can be millions of suns in a galaxy. And just think, in a dot of space that you can't even see, there's 10,000 galaxies. That, again, I'm just driving the point that NASA made my point for me. Yes, it doesn't matter how powerful the light source is. It could be something 10 million times the size of our sun, but if you take it far enough away, we can't see it. So the reason you're having a hard time wrapping your brain around how could the sun vanish on a flat Earth is because you have committed to your brain the size. NASA has convinced you it's 4 million times the size of this 25,000 mile circumference sphere. So you have to rethink that. Visibility is another factor, right? There are conditions in our atmosphere that we can't change. We can't get around, right? There's fog, there's smoke, there's dust, there's dirt, there's snow, there's rain, and all these things between you and the sun, potentially 10,000 miles away, starting its way on the other side of the Earth. So visibility is a measure. Now, visibility is actually a term you'll see when you look at a weather forecast. Excuse me. It's a measure of the horizontal opacity of the atmosphere at the point of observation. And you will see this. This is from today. Where I live in Kingsland, Georgia. And visibility is 6 miles. So how are you now? Granted, the brighter an object, the more it'll shine through something. But it tells you right here, visibility is 6 miles. So now you're contending with angular resolution. You're contending with limits of light and light getting weaker and weaker and weaker. You're contending with visibility issues. Some days you can't even see the sun during the day. Today, which is Thanksgiving Day in November 2022, you couldn't see the sun at noon anywhere you looked. It was a hazy day. It was midday, and you couldn't see any clouds. It was like a fog, but it wasn't foggy. You could see far. It was just a hazy day. It was weird. I don't even know how to describe it, but I couldn't find a picture that matched that. But let's move on a little further. It would have been similar to this. If you looked up, all you saw were gray. This has some breaks in it, right? But there were no breaks today. It was just like gray over top. So even when the sun is directly overhead, there's some days you can't even see it. So there's proof right there. Again, more proof that the sun doesn't have to go 10,000 miles away for you not to see it. There's times when you can't see it right above you. Just, again, more examples of visibility and the lack thereof and things we have to see through to see a great distance. Here the sun is out. It's, it looks like it's whatever time of day, morning or afternoon, but the sun is barely visible. It's not very bright. It's obviously, you can see it. It doesn't appear that there's a cloud in front of it, but there's haze in front of it, and there's atmosphere in front of it. So now we're going to talk about something called atmospheric magnification. Some people call it atmospheric lensing. And let's look at an example of this. Now you can see on the bottom that this is flat. This is a flat surface. The camera is at the same angle as this. I mean, it would obviously see the other side of this room, and Campbell's cameras, capture a wide area. Let's go back. And this would represent the atmosphere. Okay, so this lens right here, the only thing it's doing is representing the atmosphere. And this is just an experiment to give you an example of what atmospheric lensing would do. You can see it distorts and can hide an object. An object can appear to be behind a horizon due to this. Let's move on to the next one. Another example. So this is one that Rob Skiba did. And this is an example of a ship, if you didn't hear that, of a ship going over the curve in the sun setting. He just lifted his camera off that table. It's a flat, looks to be like a marble table. And he's just pulling it backwards. But again, same thing. He has a lens that's mounted perpendicular to the table that creates the same effect as the atmosphere, which has water in it. The atmosphere acts as the lens. And let's see this in real life. Sorry about that. Hopefully I don't get dinged for any of this. This is a clip I borrowed, and I wanted to just show this example here. They probably said where it was earlier in the film, but for the sake of brevity, West Anacapa, wherever that's at. And he snapped a picture one day. It's 12/19/16. So day 1 and day 3. Look at the difference of this. Now, here you would say, oh, okay, well, that's the curve of the Earth, right? Well, that's not the curve of the Earth, because here on another day, we can see 50% more of this island. That's a result of atmospheric lensing. That's a result of humidity and heat creating a lens that refracts an image. So a lot of times, that's a factor in the sun appearing to set. So you have another problem, and this is probably the biggest problem, which is the cloud deck, okay? So we have this cloud deck, and clouds are generally between 6,500 feet and 20,000 feet. You can, I'll put this up here for, posterity, you can read it. How high are the highest clouds? About 20,000 feet. So again, 6,000 feet to 20,000 feet. When you're in a commercial airliner, you're above the clouds. And we can agree that in either model, flat Earth or globular, spherical, whatever you want to call it, the sun would be above the clouds. And when the sun's overhead or at a shallow angle, no problem. You could see the sun as long as there's gaps in the clouds. But now imagine that as the sun gets further, you have more and more cloud deck, right? And this cloud deck becomes a hiding curtain that would, in all circumstances, now should hide the sun. Unless there were just no clouds between you. I mean, there'd have to be thousands and thousands of miles of no clouds. I guess that's possible, right? But again, you're still contending with all the other things. And we have seen the sunset, which I'll show some of those videos in closing. So here's obviously how bad the cloud deck could be. It could be more sparse. You could have huge areas with no sun. Or no clouds, sorry. It's 1 a.m. here. 1:23. Some days the sky looks like this, and other days. But you can imagine that regardless of how sparse the clouds are, it becomes a problem when you're going great distances, because the sun would obviously be higher than a 20,000 foot cloud deck, right? Flat in either model. And if it gets far away, that deck should start hiding the sun. We're beneath the deck, it's above the deck. The farther it gets, the more deck it has to penetrate for you to see it. So the sun gets smaller as it sets. Let's look at a setting sun. Now that sun just vanished, right? It got smaller. It got a lot smaller. And then it just vanished. So if we're spinning away, if the sun's setting as a result of the Earth turning, the sun should stay the same size. It's still 93 million miles away. The sun shouldn't change sizes during a sunset. But we see it go from very large to very small. And this can vary. There are days, it can vary on very cold days. When it's very dry, you can get an accurate representation. On very hot days, when it's very humid, it can magnify the sun. So the sun can appear to, different things can happen. It might maintain a similar size. It may not shrink as much, right? Because the farther it goes away, the more humidity it's going through, the more magnification. But on a cold day and on a dry day, we see it get very small, like you just saw. And let's look at one more video, and this is my closing video. And this is a video of the sun setting, and look how close it appears to be to the horizon, right? And this person is just zooming in with a camera, and what that effectively does is increases the angular resolution, right? So if he zooms in, notice how the sun appears to raise up in the air. And there's many examples of this out there. I didn't want to make this video too long. And again, as he zooms out, it appears to touch the water and even possibly obscure part of the sun. So that was my final video. I hope you, I hope it kind of gave you something to think about. I hope you look further into the model. If you have some questions, leave me a comment. I try to answer to all the comments, and see you in the next video.